The backdrop. As a young fellow, I really hated school. So after I matriculated, or in the US, graduated from high school, I really had no desire to go to university. I fell around in a few odd jobs, and then joined the South African Defence Force. I knew fuck all about politics, and cared fuck all about it. The army just seemed like a good road to adventure. After training as a doggy or dog handler in the tracker wing of the South African Defence Force Dog Centre, called the Dog Circus by us, we got sent to our respective units. My owner unit deployed to Angola, where we mixed it up with the Angolan government forces, the MPLA, and Cuban regulars, while we supported Jonas Savimbi's Uintas. The armour and the mechanized infantry were in large, fierce-scale battles, while guys like me were relatively safe. We did the patrolling and scouting, and with the dog, we normally knew about them before they knew about us. Normally. It was sort of the end of winter, start of spring, around August or September, when on a routine bundu bashing patrol, I managed to bump into a chunk of metal from an AK-47. It didn't hurt at first. It just felt like a truck had run into my arm. I hit the dirt, pulling my dog down before I consciously realized it. Then I looked at my arm. I was hit just above the right elbow, and my arm worked fine, but by now it was beginning to hurt. What worried me the most was that I was leaking. A lot. The other guys in the squad, were laying down fire, and the Bren gunner sprinted up with his number 2 and did a beautiful swan dive, landing about 5 meters from me, who, by the way, was on point. I swear that big-ass son of a bitch started laying down fire with his machine gun before he hit the ground. The radio guy called for a chopper, and then crawled over to help me put a dressing on my clipped wing, as I was having a fucking hard time doing it one-handed. Upshot of it was that the butcher's bill came to me wounded. One enemy, KIA, probably the machine gunner, because he was shot to shit, and a fuckload of tracks, indicating a party of about 12 to 15 tears. I was casevaced and eventually wound up in one military hospital in Pretoria. The wound was really minor, but it looked worse than it was. So I was out of hospital after 3, maybe 4 days. I was put in a barracks where a mishmash of soldiers are gathered up waiting for the army to get its shit together, enough to return us to our respective units. At first I learned a lot of cool stuff, like how to smoke weed from a broken off beer bottle neck. I was assured that Carling Black Label made the best pipes, but I never advanced to the level of actually being proficient enough to create a pipe myself. The build-up. And then the largest, foulest elephant turd hit the fan, in the form of massive riots and murders in a township called Mamelodi, just outside of Pretoria. Military personnel were rounded up, and, in my case, thrown in with a bunch of strangers. They saw my shoulder flashes bearing the insignia of the snarling German shepherd, and I was spirited away and issued a dog and a 9mm pistol. I tried to point out that I was a tracker, not riot crowd control doggy. But there was no one smart enough to make the distinction. I was a full 2-striper colonel, just turned 20 with not enough pubic hair to grow a mustache, finding myself second in command of a hodgepodge squad of 10 guys, including me, armed with the South African variant of an FAL battle rifle. We assed into ancient Bedford trucks, and rolled out to bolster the police and military forces already there. It was probably about a 45-minute drive, so I took that opportunity to bond with the dog as much as I could. I had a patrol bag attached to my non-standard and much better Rhodesian Army web belt, and I had filled it with dry Dogmore brand dog food. I had the standard tracker load out of 2 canteens of water for myself and 6 for the dog. I was playing take the dog food nicely with the hound, and every so often I did one myself. I was about to pop another pellet into my mouth when I realized that everybody had stopped talking. They were all looking at me in disbelief. I did the nonchalant shrug and told them it was the best way to get the dog to trust you. On short notice. It's complete bullshit, of course, but they bought it. We were still a ways off when we saw pillars of black smoke rising behind a ridge. Too many to count, and our motley crew of strangers got a little less jocular. We were not heading into an adventure. This was a good old-fashioned clusterfuck. We had choppers overhead, but unlike in Angola, where they make me feel like I had angels looking out for me, these birds made me sure that I was about to get a large bite out of a shit sandwich. I'm a fucking tracker, for God's sake. We cleared the ridge, and the entire shit pile called Mamelodi was cordoned off with police and military personnel and APCs. We got Chow and the guys in our ragged little band were left to improvise sleeping arrangements as best they could, without ponchos or sleeping bags. The other corporal and myself were called for our briefing, which we were then to relay to our men. The plan was that we'd grab breakfast, and at 0600 hours in the morning, we'd move out with several other sticks. We were to occupy a grocery store on a corner from which we were supposed to block all movement out of the township. Before nightfall, we'd be relieved, and rumor had it that more soldiers were on their way. We got back to the rest and found out that one of the fucktars had disassembled his rifle and packed the breech with weed, and they were all smoking the rifle and coughing their asses off. Now, I wasn't a do-gooder or a hypocrite, but I got into their shit deep. I told them that I didn't give a shit if they get goofed that night, but tomorrow there's no weed going with us. And whoever belongs to that rifle had better clean it properly before I see it. I found myself the softest hard spot under a Sample 60, and tied the dog leash to it, so that he had some space to move. He decided to crawl in under the truck with me, so at least I had a pillow. I didn't sleep very much, and it was a long night, and then, too quickly it was over. I was feeling apprehensive, like a sense of foreboding that wouldn't settle down. The sound of the choppers were getting on my tits, and the stink of burning car tires were irritating my nostrils. We trooped off to Chow, where the Woodfit had a lovely breakfast of powdered eggs and greasy half-raw bacon. There was no way I was going to eat that shit. It'd make me puke or give me the shits or both. Fuck that song. Time came, and we moved into the township, staggered calm, with me taking point. I'm a tracker, so I go tracker. The stink was really strong now, and there was something besides the rubber stink. The dog knew more about it than I did, and it interested him. But I couldn't quite figure it out. We got to a T-junction, where my stick made a left to our designated spot, and another went right to whichever part of hell they were supposed to guard. We rounded that corner with me hugging the wall on the left side of that street. It was full light, although the sun had not yet risen enough to clear the ridgeline. The shadows were long, and it was very quiet apart from those fucking choppers that I wish somebody would shoot down. For some reason, they were creeping me out more and more. I waved to someone behind me ahead, and a neutral-clad figure quickly sprinted past, crossed over the street, and took a knee with his rifle at the ready. I could smell the dust he had kicked up on that dirt road. The next guy moved up on my side of the street, past me, and took a knee about 15 or 20 meters on. Nobody was shooting, so I unfucked myself and took point again. I passed the soldier in front of me, focusing half of my attention on the clusterfuck around me, and half on what the dog's ears are telling me. He was one alert houndlet, and even though he wasn't telling me that there was anything wrong, he was very interested. I speak dog, so I know he'll tell me if there's someone. and if I use his ears and nose like sights on a rifle, he'll point the source out too. We had about a 200-meter straight shot to our little stretch of paradise, when I had to pass a very narrow alley between two buildings. I did a quick turkey peek, and then took a better look. The smell of burnt rubber and that something else was very strong now. Stronger than ever. I saw a pile of black shit lying there, and there were scorch marks on the walls, on both sides of the walls. The gap was wide enough for a man to walk through, but barely. Something around 60 centimeters or so. Apart from the burnt pile of trash about 3 meters in, I couldn't see anything interesting. But the dog insisted that this is the shit. I gave him some slack on the leash and he sniffed his way straight to the trash. He grabbed himself a souvenir and came to show it off. The horror. I wasn't in the mood to fuck around with doggy treasures, so I pulled his leash closer to get the shit away from him, so we can Charlie Mike. I reached out my left hand to take the thing and I... Jesus fucking froze. It looked like a claw, but this was no claw. I was staring at a fucking burnt human hand and arm up to the elbow. That pile of shit was somebody. Car tires pulled over his head to his torso to trap his arms against his chest, then doused with gasoline. Petrol, we called it. And burnt alive. I had seen a few deaders before then, and some had their shit scattered pretty wide. And it didn't bother me that much, but this was a kick in the balls. I don't know how long I was staring at that hand, claw. I became aware of someone hissing behind me. Corporal! 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 I moved my right arm to shoulder height, fist clenched. Bundu language for freeze. Then I gave the sign for enemy, and one, then direction, and pointed at my boots, and distance, and then boots again. Sign for corporal with 2 fingers on my sleeve, where NCO rank goes. To me, with fingers pointing down, tapping my head. Then radio man, with thumb and pinky finger to the ear. And to me, again. Okay, so it wasn't an enemy. But that was the best I could come up with at short notice, alright? And I couldn't speak. The shit was scared out of me so thoroughly that I was transparent. The squad leader came up with the radio man. What the fuck? He says. I just pointed the dog. He leans forward to look around the corner, looks at me, and back to the dog. Fuck me, he says like a prayer. The mongrel fucked it all up. Call it in, boats. Now in this narrative, most of what I said I translate from Afrikaans to English, and I focus on getting an equivalent meaning instead of direct translation. That'd be as useful as tits on a duck, so anyway. The mongrel fucked it all up. Call it in, boats. His real name is not Boats. It's because his feet are so big that his boots look like boats. He calls it in and requests, please advise. And we hear the stand by, 0 Charlie out. All this time the SL and I are staring at that fucking thing. Then he says to me in a whisper, tell him to drop it. Fucking brilliant. Here I am, a trained doggy, and a stinking pongo has to tell me how to solve this puzzle. A pongo is a derogatory term for an infantry soldier. The line goes where the infantry goes, the pong as in stink goes. So I tell the dog, loss, and he drops the arm. The SL positions the guys, 2 rifles down our line of travel, 2 on our 6, 1 down that fucking alley, leaving himself and the radio man as reserve to fill wherever needed. And me as a useless swinging dick with a little 9mm pea shooter, 2 loaded mags, and 9 loose rounds totaling 25 rounds. "Hey, Boats, I'll handle the radio, free you up a bit," I say to the radio man. "Thanks, Corp." And he unass's the radio next to me. The back of his uniform was one big dark wet sweat stain. Back in the 80s, those fucking things were heavy. So we wait. The sun clears the ridgeline. Nothing. We start seeing movement, peeping through glassless windows. Doors opening just a crack. Invisible watchers around corners betrayed by their projected shadows. And if one of those peepers has an AK-47, somebody is dead. The range is too short, and we are too exposed. Why, oh why did I let the dog into that alley? We would have been settled in with cover by now. Fuck my life. After maybe 20 or 30 minutes, I get on the air. "Zero Charlie, Charlie 1-3, Zero Charlie, Charlie 1-3, message over." Almost immediately, "Zero Charlie, send, over." "Charlie 1-3, status update required, urgent, over." "Zero Charlie, wheels en route, over." As he says that, a Bedford rounds the corner where we split from the other stick 1,000 years ago. "Charlie 1-3, roger, have eyes on, have movement unidentified, danger close. Can you send a bird, over. We are exposed, say again. Friendlies in the open, over." "Zero Charlie Wilco, your wish is my command, princess, over." Dick. "Buy you a cold one, Charlie 1-3, out." The Bedford rolls up in the SL, rifle slung, standing straight up in the middle of the street, guiding the shitty old truck to the exact inch he wanted it. So far, in spite of none of us ever having worked together, except for the SL and Boats, who were from a unit in the Caprivi, it seemed to me that we were not doing too badly. So as long as nobody fucked up our day further. The fat little pig of a private driving yelled for us to load the meat. "Get your fucking tubby ass out here," someone tells him. And the pig of a man smirks and says, "Not my job, I drive." He points at the other guy and says, "He escorts. Not his job." The SL points his fist at him, with the thumb tucked between middle and index finger. This is the South African equivalent of the upraised middle finger in the US. Two guys go into the narrow space and drag the corpse out. I hear sounds of puking, some movement. And then the worst case of dry heaves I've ever heard. It sounded like somebody was breathing sand. I looked around the corner. I could see better now in the strong light. The guys were on their knees, one at the feet, the other at the head, each facing away from the corpse, heaving and puking. I could see one guy's face. He was one of those red hair, pink complexion types. But he was as white as a hospital sheet now. They had decided to grab the corpse by the ankles and the other by the shoulders and carry it out. Except the thing unraveled on them. I don't care who you are, but this is not something young men in their late teens and early 20s should be doing. The red-haired fellow stared at me. Pale, ice-blue eyes, full of tears, with tears spilling freely down his face, mouth hanging open. His expression was nothing I had ever seen, not even in the eyes of a man breathing his last, talking to his mother who isn't there. It was far, far worse. Terror, pleading like an abused dog. Pain, the realization that God is dead. And more that there were no words for. A broken soul. I was scared. No. Terrified. Angry. More furious than I had ever been. And wounded. Even though I had known this man for less than a week, he was my brother. I said in a choked-up croak, "Rifleman, get the fuck out of there." Rifleman is the equivalent rank to private, but only infantry are ever riflemen. I couldn't remember the red-haired guy's name, so I put my hand on his shoulder and pulled him a bit closer and said, "Duracell, will you do me a solid?" He looked at me and just nodded. "Can you take care of Rex for me? I don't need him getting into shit here. He did a half smile, his eyes empty like a fucking zombie on heroin, and he took the leash from me. And his grasp was firm. I watched him lead the dog about 5 meters away, where he sat down, rested his back against the wall, and started petting the dog. The dog licked his face. And if there is a God, I thank him that this man didn't know what was in that dog's mouth not long ago. I called the SL, Corp, a minute. He came over. I told him the layout. We can't let the guys do this. This is too fucked up. Then I said, "Did you have breakfast?" "That shit?" "Gave it to Rex." "Great." No doubt everybody else did too. And I'm soon going to have a dog shitting pools everywhere. We poked around for a bit and eventually ripped a piece of sheet metal off somebody's shanty roof. Fuck them all. We carried the sheet metal over and it was just wide enough to fit in that space. Barely 2 centimeter clearance on each side. I went in first, backward. I was going to guide the metal under the thing. And he was going to be the force pushing it. I backpedaled with my boots, scraping the walls on either side. I got the sheet of metal under the head. It was bad. Worse than I'd ever seen. The lips were gone, leaving a gruesome grin. The skin was stretched over the skull like a mummy's. Ears gone, nose gone, just a hole. Patches of skin gone, showing the skull. Very, very, very bad. And I've seen the remains of dudes on trees after being hit by 155mm artillery. And that is nothing. Nothing near as bad as this horror. I think I must have zoned out. And eventually we got it onto the metal. Most of it at least. We carried it over to the Bedford, not looking at it, or trying not to. The SL was very pale, and I probably looked the same. Both called to his friend. "Okay, Corp?" And the SL looked over at him. Just looked at him. He was not okay. I was not okay. None of us were okay. Both yelled again. "Jobber sees nothing outside the shanties, but they'll lay on a station for a while." I don't even know how long the chopper has been there. Our shit was not together. I yelled at the cab. "Come drop the fucking tailgate." Porky tried the not my job shit again and I lost it. Up to now, we were on condition 3, meaning full magazine in the rifle, chamber empty, safety on. One of the riflemen securing our front looked around. He was angry. We were all angry. I told the soldier, "Rifleman." "Corp?" "Battle condition 1. He flipped off the safety of his rifle and cycled the action. Rifle ready to fire. "Fat fuck, if this tailgate is not down in 5 seconds, your engine and tires will be shot to shit, and we will leave you here. See how long before they burn you." I never thought that a guy with an ass that big could move so fast. But we got the thing loaded and left it on the truck bed, metal and all. By now everybody had seen it, and we were disturbed on many levels, primarily the unspoken thought, if they could do this to one of their own, what would they do to us if they had a chance? I suggested to the squad leader that we'd put everybody on condition 2. He concurred, so everyone went to round chambered. Safety on. I cycled my pistol and lowered the hammer carefully on a live round, engaging the safety. Dropped the mag, and added a round from the loose ones in my pocket. If shit went sideways now, all I had to do was flip off the safety, cock back the hammer, and I'd have 9 rounds with which to try and hit something. If I did hit what I was aiming at, it would be good fortune rather than skill. So I was praying that it didn't come to it. Why the fuck didn't they give me an Uzi? That's a tool I can use. I carried one in Angola, and even though my job there was to find them and have the radio guy rat them out to the cannon cockers, or artillery if you insist on being polite, I had fired thousands of rounds from mine, for the hell of it. I went over to the soldier I very originally nicknamed Duracell, and I told him that if he wanted to keep taking care of the dog, I'd take his rifle. "No, I'm good, Corp. When we get there, I can take him if you need to do something." "Okay." He had a look I really didn't care for, that dead zombie stare. But at least it wasn't a heroin zombie look. Massacre. The rest of the trip to the grocery was uneventful. People were still turkey peeking, and there were a few who stood in doorways, staring at us with undisguised hostility. Not a good omen, especially when seen in the light of what they do to folks they don't like. We settled in, and we assigned staggered 2-hour watches, 2 rifles covering the street, running roughly north and 2 rifles east. The SL took one post with a rifleman, and I did the same at the other. The SL and I would stay on watch for an hour, after which another soldier would start his watch in our respective positions for 2 hours. The first rifleman would then be relieved after his 2-hour shift was over, and so on and so forth. The idea is that although there were only 10 men, we're at 50% readiness all the time, and that at both posts there would always be a soldier with an hour or less of duty time. It was relatively quiet for the first hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. People were coming out of their shanties, milling about and discussing us. They were pointing and looking in our direction too much for it to be anything else. I dearly wanted to call for reinforcements, but what do I say? We need more guys. They are looking at us. Not a good idea. Besides, we're probably so freaked the fuck out by that burnt guy that we're shitting over shadows. Gradually more and more people appeared, and the group swelled. This was all towards the east. Nobody to the north. This being morning, we had the sun in our faces. Not exactly the ideal Sun Tzu defensive position. As the crowd swelled, they got louder. We reported up that there was a growing crowd at our position, and we were told not to do anything provocative, but let no one pass. Roger that, we are royally fucked. Still the crowd grew, and now there was a general chanting. Maybe they were singing. Some of the women ululated, and every few seconds some woman would turn her back, bend over and flip her dress up, bearing her ass at us. They shouted insults in their language, but we didn't need to know the language to get the gist of it. Mostly it was the women in front and the men behind them. We could see that some of the men were armed with the traditional African war club, called a knobkerrie. Thus is a solid wooden club with a shaft of roughly 4 centimeters in diameter, about 1 meter or less long, terminating in a rounded knob, about the size of a large man's fist. I didn't see any guns, but that doesn't mean there were none. What troubled me and sort of reassured me was the fact that there were kids among the crowd. Troubling because what kind of parent brings a kid to what could turn into a riot? Reassuring because surely there won't be violence when your own kids are there. Then there's the burnt guy. Eventually, the crowd started advancing. I didn't notice at first because they would advance 5 paces and retreat 4, doing this so-called toy-toy dance. The women ululating, the toy-toying, the ass-flashing, insults, the closing distance, about 60 meters now, was not good for our nerves. As far as I know, nobody gave an order, but we now had 2 rifles posted north, kind of. The retention was fixed east. To the east were 7 rifles. I tied the dog's leash to my Rhodesian web belt, ordered him to lay down, and then to stay there. The cur was well trained, but we were as well matched as ice cream and Tabasco. What the fuck am I doing here? I lay down behind the radio. At 60 meters, that radio wouldn't stop a slingshot. It's a placebo. The crowd was probably about 200 strong, but they seemed to be 2,000, and the vanguard was only about 50 meters away now. Then that enormous lump of festering shit hit the fan. Twice. with nerves frayed to the point of breaking and beyond. It took next to nothing. One of the fucktards stepped out 2 paces and turned. He had a fucking Molotov cocktail, and someone in that herd lit the cloth wick. He ran about 3 paces forward, his posture like that of a cricket bowler. Bang, ba 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 ba, a single shot that may or may not have hit the moron. And then every rifle blasting. I don't believe anyone held their fire. I'm certain that there was no order to open fire. No, I know. I can't prove it, but I know it. The whole thing went into that movie slow motion. Spent brass glinted brightly in the sunlight as they flew in their leisurely arcs to gently tink, tink, tink to the floor. I just stare, hypnotized. And this shit had never happened before. I stare, radio handset in my right hand, frozen, paralyzed, brass flying, people scattering like roaches. A guy in a raggedy, faded sky blue shirt pitches forward as his head explodes. A woman crawling on hands and knees, bucks again and again. She lumped and stiffened, stretching out on the ground awkwardly, and moved no more. I see a woman trying to drag a man, and she goes down. And I do nothing. By the time I unfuck myself, the men are working their way through their second 20-round magazine. At least I hope it's only the second. Those rifles that were standard in most of the Western world in the 80s are not the dinky little 5.56 by 45mm NATO, or similar civilian .223 Remington, which the bullet only weighs about 50 grains. This is the 7.62 by 51mm NATO. Civilian equivalent is a .308 Winchester, and the bullet we used weighed 174 grains. It is deadly, but I digress. I start screaming, "Cease fire! Cease fucking fire!" And I guess the SL unfucks himself also. His weird fuck all y'all expression changes to a oh fuck shit fuck fire expression. And he immediately starts slapping heads, kicking butts, smacking backs with the buttstock of his rifle, all the time roaring, "Cease fire!" The ba 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 turns into bang bang bang. Then silence. I think there were about 15, maybe 20 people laying motionless, and there were a few trying to crawl or moving feebly. We were in deep shit. The SL was a good commander. He made quick decisions. And while the decision may not be the best decision, even a bad action in war is better than no action. Even though this was not over, and war is what we trained for, not police actions or playing clusterfucks like this. Anyway, the SL turned to the rear wall and deliberately placed 5 or 6 rounds through that wall randomly, anywhere between knee and shoulder height. He said, "Listen up. Here's the deal, short and sweet. We took fire." He pointed at the bullet holes in the back wall. "And we're about to be set on fire by that cunt." Pointed the genius laying on his back in a Christ crucified position, Molotov cocktail in a pool of fire nearby. "So I ordered you to open fire. When the threat was suppressed, Corporal Doggy ordered ceasefire. Now boats, call it up. Rest of you, reload, condition 2. Epilogue. We were all required to give our version of events in statements, and Higher was very satisfied with our vague reports. I'm sure they knew it was excessive, but they probably couldn't give a shit. We were pulled out, and each went our separate ways. I have never seen any of those soldiers again. I served a few more years in the South African Defence Force, but as soon as I could, I bought my ass out. I was a staff sergeant then. I moved to Israel, but my life never had peace. The burnt guy visits me almost every night, as does the guy with his head blown off, the crawling woman, and the man dying trying to save the wounded or dead guy. Sometimes there are others, faceless, all accusing, and mea culpa. In Israel I met my wife, an American all-woman and all-lady. We got married, and I came to America with her. I became an American, and having no real skills, I volunteered for the US Army, mended my ways, and went into armored cavalry. I served Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom. I am proud of my adoptive country, and will lay down my life for her. But even now, as a retired and disabled veteran, even 31 years later, the ghosts haunt me still. I can only say, mea culpa. This is an event that changed my life. I am not trying to make any political statements, or justify my actions or the actions of my comrades. I am merely relating events as they unfolded, and as I recall them. No accusations, and no excuses. Wait. I will close with a statement. God bless the USA, and may He forgive me.